News Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brady Batista, give me the rock. Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Monday, July 28th, 2025. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 487 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the Jardy Basement. It's a little late here in the evening here on a Monday, and had hoped, first of all, to have another podcast out to you by the end of last week, and that just didn't quite come to pass. And then I'd hoped to have this one recorded for you earlier in the day, but it's funny how things just shake out when you come back from some time off. And I've noticed this over the years. It's the same every time, where when you take a little bit of time away, you come back, and like the first 1 to 3 days, you're sitting there going, what the heck am I supposed to write? Like, what have I've missed stuff? So you're reading and trying to catch up on all of that. And you're like just reaching out to people, let them know, hey, I'm back. I'm, checking in. What do you have going on? And like when you're doing this for a living, like you're constantly like working on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And there's just sort of a never ending flow of deadlines and stories to tell. And then when you just suddenly like take a break, like it stops that wheel, and it always takes a little bit of effort and a couple of days to get that thing turning again. And then the funny thing is that once it does, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, honestly, because you're generally making up for lost time, you're covering ground that you missed, and you're also doing your normal workload. And it takes a while to kind of get back to that equilibrium, if you ever do, honestly. And so it was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday last week. I kind of thought, all right, I might have some stuff going on by the end of the week, and there might be enough national college basketball news that might merit a podcast by the end of the week. And I couldn't get to it. The week kind of accelerated and has not slowed down now as we've gone through the weekend and are in the early part of this week. I got a lot of stories on my plate right now. And I tell you that to say, like, that's a very good thing. And I'm very excited right now. It's a great feeling to like know that you've got some fun stories to tell. You've got some interesting angles to explore. This should be a good stretch here of Ohio State basketball content. And I'm not going to spoil everything on here, and I'm not going to go over everything on here that I have on my to-do list, because I'll just probably podcast again here before a couple of days. But yeah, I genuinely appreciated that on Monday early in the morning when I started to realize, like, holy cow, like my to-do list is ever growing. I had a couple of people reach out and say, does that mean there's a podcast coming? And it's neat. I mean, we're sitting here, we're closing in on 500 episodes. If you have ideas on how to celebrate episode 500, let me know, because we're going to be there before I know it. But to think that like this did not used to be a thing, and now I have people who in it alongside like the work that I do or the stories that I write, they want to know when the next podcast is going to be. It was a very, not life affirming, but I don't know, it felt good. I appreciated hearing that from those of you that reached out and asked, like, does that mean there's a podcast coming soon? So I'll do my best to keep this one kind of tight and hit on a couple of topics before I get out of here, because like I said, it makes more sense to keep this one relatively tight and not like record a 50-minute episode and cover everything all at once. We'll break it down over the course of the week. So look for another one here before too much longer. But before we dive into it, as always, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you do subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for you. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time to do all those things. You are greatly appreciated, and it means a lot. All right, so one of the things that came to pass at the end of last week was I got to go watch Ohio State's practice. So I was at the Schottenstein Center on Friday, had a interview with Jake Diebler, catching up on a couple of things, and then got to watch a summer practice. And it was a intense, competitive summer practice. Lots of up and down, lots of 5-on-5, lots of competition. And I felt like I learned a couple of things about a couple of guys, with the ever-standing caveat of this is one glimpse into one summer practice without even like the full team there. Like Matthew Rjicic is with his German U18 national team right now, and he wouldn't be able to practice anyway at the moment. Colin White not practicing yet. Josh Ojimuna also not practicing. Like it's not the full group, and it is, again, summer. So taking just one snapshot of one day. None of this, well, most of this is not like write it in ink and this is what the season, or what it means for this or that for the season. But I was impressed straight away with freshman Amare Bynum, and watching him in practice and talking to people around the program. Like I tweeted this out, I think on Friday, might have been Friday, but he's going to be a problem this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if like a month and a half in, he's really pushing for a starting spot. He looked every bit the impressive impact type of player that people around the program have been telling me for months that he is going to be. He's an interesting guy because he was not like he wasn't a 5-star, not a top 40 recruit. There's a lot of things about his ranking that would, in this modern era, indicate not impact player. But when you peel back the layers a little bit and you recognize he had the injury that held him back a bit his senior year, you peel that back and you look at what he can do and his size, and there is real reason for optimism that he's going to be a significant contributor on this team. And we've seen freshmen be significant contributors for Ohio State these last several years. You can go back year by year and pick off a couple of them, or one or two. But what is really interesting to me about him and about what his growth could mean for Ohio State is that you're projecting maybe a month into the season, like there's some real opportunity there for growth. And this team's success will not solely rest on the hope that growth happens. And I say that to say, like, you look at, these last couple of years, and you were counting on multiple players to make that kind of growth for this team, for the Ohio State team to get to its potential. And what you have with this year's team is a much more veteran, experienced group that you have pretty comprehensive baseline understandings of. And you're not asking 3 starters to take drastic steps over the course of a season for them to get to where they need to get. You're basically asking the guys who have been high-level contributors on their teams for, in every case except for John Mobley Jr., multiple seasons. You're asking them to continue that, to be who they've proven that they are. And then you have a guy like Bynum who can come along and give you a real shot in the arm as the year goes on. There's a lot of optimism about what he can do. And I can tell you about one play that I saw where he had the ball on the perimeter and Christoph Tilley was in the sort of the short post extended. Like he wasn't on the block. He was a little bit outside the key. And he was able, Amare was able to feed the ball to Tilley, who got the ball with a big man on him, squared up, saw Bynum cutting to the rim, got him with a pass, and he finished at the rim. And I thought to myself in that moment, when's the last time I've seen Ohio State have a 4-man and a 5-man put together a give and go, much less a give and go that looks so effortlessly fluid? It was striking. It also says something about the court vision of a player like Christoph Tilley and all the ways that they think he's going to impact the offense and impact this team's spacing and collective basketball IQ. More on that in a minute. But that play really struck me. There was a play where somehow he got loose and he threw down, again, Amare Bynum here, threw down a one-handed dunk that was like echoed throughout the practice gym. I had someone tell me a story about a play that he had in practice where he got the ball in like the right corner, gave a ball fake, drove to his right, got cut off at the baseline, Euro stepped to his left, put up a floater in traffic that didn't fall, but as the ball was bouncing, he, after getting off the floater, landing, he like hopped to his left, jumped up off of 2 feet, and slammed home the putback. And the athleticism of that play really stuck with, as I was getting the story, like that was the emphasis of the power and the athleticism coming from a freshman. So I can't say that I saw him shoot the ball from the perimeter particularly well on this day. And to be honest, very few guys did shoot the ball particularly well in practice this day. It was I was told before practice started, they had a really, really hard lift that morning. And it was also the end of the practice week. It was their last practice of the week. So, it's summer and you see that kind of stuff. They didn't collectively as a team shoot it very well. But the physicality and the athleticism and things like that from Amare Bynum really stuck with me from what I got to see. Another guy that was just happy to see out there, but Tayson Chapman, he looks like a dude. Like he looks like a guy who can help. He looks like a guy who can have a role. I watched him go up in traffic and grab a rebound, and then start the break going the other way. And I just thought to myself, like, you haven't seen many Ohio State guards go into the paint to get a rebound and then start pushing it in transition. Positive sign, certainly for a guy like that who's been through so much these last couple of years. I mentioned earlier, Colin White wasn't practicing. However, he is making progress. And I talked about him on the last podcast. You saw him do like some shooting without the walking boot or anything. In the video interviews that 97.1 The Fan did at their day out at practice while I was on vacation. But I did ask Jake Diebler about Colin, because one of the things that is a concern certainly is that he has lost a lot of development time. And what does that mean for what his role could look like now as a sophomore compared to what it might have looked like had he been fully healthy for this entire offseason? And he said everything's going well. He says he's progressing well. But he said, quote, I feel bad for him because there's just been this long period that should have been a major period of growth. Him not being able to progress like we thought he could as a freshman, we really could have used him. Obviously, he had some really good minutes against USC on the road. If he would have been able to play consistently last year, I think he would have taken some minutes from some guys and would have provided a different type of player that would have helped us. We felt like this was going to be a huge summer for him. Unfortunately, he had to really get himself taken care of, so he could not have to deal with this injury anymore. He did say, like, it's been a benefit. He's been able to be there and watch everything. He's around. He understands the concepts that they're preaching, and that he's a guy who's obviously dedicated, high basketball IQ, and that they believe will be able to hit the ground running as soon as he's fully cleared. But he has missed time, and so we'll see what that looks like for him as he gets into the fall. But I do know that they're viewing him as a guy who will be a contributing player in the rotation. How far he can go, I think, will ultimately be decided by how quickly he can make up for lost time. And that's unfortunate for him. That's tough. But he has shown, for him to play through it this past year, I think certainly shows you a thing or two about the toughness level there. One guy who did have a rough day of practice when I was there was Ivan Yagovin. This has been, I think, a little bit of a challenging summer for him. He's made some strides from what I can tell. Has not been able to, he hasn't played a lot of games when you really think about it. Since getting to Ohio State, I had heard during the season there was talk that he might be back overseas this summer playing some dates with his national team. That didn't happen. So he's been working in Columbus. I did see him at the Kingdom Summer League a couple weeks ago, where he's on Bruce Thornton's team, and Bruce said he did that by design because he wanted to get more opportunities to play with him and get for them to get to know each other. Certainly, he's a body that I think you can use in the Big Ten, and I think it's reasonable to think he can hold down a couple minutes a game. How big of a step he can ultimately take this year, we'll see. But it looked like a tough practice for him. And again, like I'm not trying to make too much or too little of just one of their, 8 weeks of summer practices, but it looked like a bit of a tough go for Yvonne. On the other side, as I've talked about, guys look like legs were a little bit tired. End of the week, heavy lift, dead of summer, all that stuff. But one dude that it did not seem to affect was Bruce Thornton and his ability to shoot. And it really has struck me this summer from watching that, seeing him in the Kingdom Summer League, how, no doubt about it, Bruce Thornton's jumper looks. And it got me thinking a little bit like, well, who else looks like that, or who else has looked like that? Like when I think about Buckeyes who, when they shoot from three, I just assume it's in. And, at times, certainly last year, John Mobley, but like a guy who for the balance of a season, every time they shot it, I thought it would go in. The comparison that jumped to my mind right now is Jamison Battle. I just felt like that whole year that Battle was at Ohio State, every time he shot it, you assumed it was good. And that's what Bruce Thornton's three-point shot looks like right now. He just looks so smooth and comfortable and consistent with his release, with his mechanics. And I just think about, as a freshman, he certainly made some. But I never really thought, man, Bruce Thornton, shooter. It was always Bruce Thornton, big, physical, tough, point guard, distributor, get in the lane, draw contact, all that stuff. He looks like a shooter on top of all that other stuff. It's his shooting, and it's something I'm gonna have to write at some point, like how he got from where he was as a freshman to where he is now as he prepares for his senior year, because he just looks like a very confident, consistent 3-point shooter. And that much was very evident in this practice. There were a couple of times that John Mobley looked the same. He hit a three. I think Devin was guarding him and was right up on him, arms outstretched, and somehow Junie still got the shot up and it fell. And it just, what else can he do? It was no fault to the defense that he made that shot. And clearly that's still very much in his bag. He will be taking part in the Chris Paul Elite Guard Camp that will take place July 29th. Well, that's tomorrow. When you're listening to this, on Tuesday, July 29th through August 1st in Las Vegas. So he's one of 12 guys who got an invite to the camp. 20-year NBA All-Star Chris Paul running the camp. It's described as, quote, teaching attendees what it takes to play at the highest level, how to prepare for the hurdles they will face in college, and then the NBA. So pretty good sign for Mobley and for what his sophomore season could look like. He has, again, looked impressive when we got to see things. I also did notice that at one point, again, we're talking summer practice, guys are tired. Gabe Cup's taking a charge. Probably something we can put on our bingo card as we go through the season. Probably a good one to remember for the over-unders. And I have not forgotten about those, by the way. I will do an over-under episode here probably as we get into August. That is coming. I just have not gotten to it just yet. I have the file all set up on my computer here. So those are just some of the top of my head takeaways from getting to watch practice. I will have more to say and to write about the offense and about how things might look different this year. I'm writing that here in a couple of days, so look for that story, and I'll talk about that more once that story goes up. But I don't want to give it all away here just yet. So moving on to Well, going across the pond a little bit here, but Matthew Grew. All right, so I have a pronunciation guide. Grujicic. And say like Grujicic. I'm still working on it. I will get there. But so he's playing for Germany in the U18 Eurobasket tournament in Belgrade, Serbia, and they just concluded group stage play earlier here on Monday. Germany went 1-2 in the group stage and took a loss to Bulgaria, a game where Germany led comfortably going into the fourth quarter, and it was outscored 26-8 in the final 10 minutes. It was my first real chance to just sit down and kind of watch a full game of his. Couple of my thoughts. It was clear like they had the ball in his hands in a couple of critical moments. Like they were going to him to maybe make a play or to initiate a play. It did not always work, but he was a guy they were leaning on throughout the game. And as the pressure picked up, he did at times struggle against getting double teamed in the backcourt. He finished with 5 turnovers, which gives him in 3 games, he has turned the ball over 14 times. I did not watch the first 2 games. They were Saturday and Sunday. But the turnovers as a whole for Germany in that fourth quarter, it just seemed like the pressure is coming from everywhere. And collectively, they could not handle what Bulgaria's defense was doing. So it was not an issue that was just specific to the Buckeye. And of his 5 turnovers, only 1 was in the fourth quarter. They had 7 turnovers as a team in that fourth quarter. So anyway, his perimeter shot wasn't necessarily falling. He hit he was 1 for 5 from 3, and the one that he hit was like a deep kind of cold-blooded 3. It was impressive, but like I said, that was his only make. He's not shooting great from the perimeter in this tournament so far. I was impressed with his passing. As I say, almost in the same breath that he did turn it over 5 times and struggled against some of the double teams, the way that Bulgaria was blowing up some of the ball screens they were trying to run. But when he was able to split the double team, or when he was able to get through that initial pressure and get his head up, he showed some really good court vision. There were 2 or 3 times where they ran an action and he was able to read the coverage and hit his teammate on like a slip screen for a wide open bucket. Type of play that Ohio State has struggled with maybe in some of these last couple of years, but he was able to make those reads and to get the ball where it needed to be. He also did show an ability to drive and kick. Couple 1 or 2 times where he was able to get past his man, get into the paint and draw the defense, and then kick out for a wide open shot. So in his first 2 games, he scored 23 points in both of them. He finished with 21 in this game. He's leading Germany at 22.3 points per game. Also pulling down 8.7 rebounds per game and averaging 3.0 assists per game. He shot 41.5% in group stage play, 22 for 53, but he's only 21.7% from 3. That's 5 for 23. So you throw those out, and he is 17 for 30 from the floor from 2-point range. So has been much more effective at the rim than from the perimeter. Germany will play in the knockout round Wednesday. So I'll have more on that as they move on. But Germany finished 1-2 in group stage play. 3 of the 4 teams in their group finished 1-2. So moving back to the States, I did watch Brandon Knoll in the Kingdom Summer League on Sunday. He was the only current Buckeye who played, which to me was in itself noteworthy, given that it was a clearly a physically demanding week for the Buckeyes. But he was there. His outside shot wasn't falling. He was 1 of 5 from 3, but he did go 9 of 16 overall. He had 21 points. He did have a tough late turnover that when the game was over, he sat there for probably 4 or 5 minutes. They lost by 3. It was a really entertaining game, actually. And when the game was over and they shook hands, he just kind of sat there and kind of stared straight ahead for a couple of minutes, and then when he kind of got up and started moving, then we talked for a bit, and I asked him about that. I said, like, it's one of the things I love so much about the Kingdom Summer League is it's like, you're getting to know these guys. And so, he could have been sitting there, just spaced out, or could have been sitting there like analyzing every whatever in his mind, or like maybe he's thinking about, all right, well, how do I go home? Like, who knows? So I asked him, I just said, like, hey, what, when you're sitting there, like what's going through your mind? And he did say that, yeah, it was certainly an element of like replaying what he could have done differently, what as a team they could have done differently, and how, like, even if it's the Kingdom Summer League, like, he doesn't want to lose. And so I will have a story on him shortly, so I don't want to go too in depth on that, but it was an interesting little bit of insight into who he is and what makes him tick when it comes to the game of basketball. So look for that story here before long, as well as a story on Gabe Cupps. And you probably saw the video during the weekend on social media, but made a decision to buy his sister a car for her birthday with his NIL money. And I'm very excited to write this one. It's the next thing I'm going to be doing. Look for that one before long. Again, don't want to give too much away, but excited to get to tell that story. And I also had quite a few recruiting stories lately. So Cameron Mercer, top 10 prospect in 2028, visiting Ohio State on August 1st. I spoke with his dad, Craig Mercer, about their recruitment, about Ohio State, why they're visiting Ohio State on the first day that they can. You can read that at dispatch.com. Story that'll publish Tuesday morning. 2027 combo guard LJ Smith from Lincolnton, North Carolina, is visiting on August 2nd. Turns out there's an Ohio tie there. He's got family from Cincinnati. So said he grew up cheering for North Carolina, Clemson, and Ohio State. So interesting connection there to a North Carolina recruit who is also on the Ohio State radar. And I wrote a story, this one up late last week, about Jaron Holmes, who got a new offer from Ohio State, 2027 small forward, also from North Carolina. He's an interesting case. One of the things that we talked about, so he transferred schools here for this upcoming season. He also reclassified to 2027. He was in the class of 2026, but he reclassed to 2027 to be, he said he's young, like his birthday's in September, I think he told me. So now he's basically in the grade that he probably should have been in. He's been playing up all this time. And once he reclassed, he said then the offers started to come in, and including obviously Ohio State here. And like LJ Smith, Holmes has a Ohio tie. He's originally from Cleveland. So interesting that they keep finding guys who aren't in Ohio but have ties to the state. And I'm curious going forward to see how much of an impact that may or may not have in their recruitment. So those are all the main things that I wanted to try to hit on this episode. Like I said, I don't want to record like a 50-minute episode right now, but I wanted to hit on some of those main points right there. I have other stories that I didn't even get to, or I didn't even tease on this episode of the podcast, that will be coming your way here in the next couple of days. So I know that football fall camp starts on Thursday, but we know that there is an audience out there that still wants to read about Ohio State basketball, and I'm very excited to get to tell you these stories and to get to bring you inside the program as the Buckeyes go through the summer. Now, this week that we are in right now will be Ohio State's 7th week of summer practice. You get 8 weeks. After this week, the Buckeyes will be off for 2 weeks, and then will return for 1 week, which will be the final week of summer, and like that will lead into then the start of the fall. So that's kind of the schedule upcoming here. It will get quiet again, kind of starting next week when it comes to the current team. There will be obviously recruiting and things like that, but that's probably why I would look in that time period for the over-under recap episode. That'll be coming your way here before too much longer, but we still got a lot of stuff here to get to before we get to that point. So no determination yet if there's going to be tournament expansion. I think there's even more confusion than ever about NIL and what's allowed and what's not. I don't think there's any real clarity on that right now. It's an interesting time in the sport as a whole. So stay tuned. We'll see what each new day could potentially bring. And I gotta say, I am still very much on an Oasis kick, more so than normal. I just keep thinking about that show in Cardiff and just how unbelievably amazing that was. So thanks for indulging me on the last episode and let me go on and on with that. I did see something about how people are saying there's no song of the summer for 2025. Like there's no big runaway hit that is going to sort of define the summer. And I would just tell you to go listen to Stand By Me by Oasis. That is my humble nomination. The standout track from Be Here Now, released back in 1997. Song of the summer for 2025. Go give it a listen. Tell me if you agree. It sounds amazing live. It's getting a great reaction. I keep watching videos from all these concerts. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. As always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty for putting this out there and for being on standby. I messaged him early on Monday and said, hey, I'm going to podcast today. Are you around? And now here it is, almost 11 o'clock at night. I'm finally getting to it. So apologies, Patrick, but thanks for getting this out there. I'll be back with you guys all again by the weekend. So stay tuned for that. But until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.